When people think of the Pope, they picture peace, prayer, and diplomacy. But hidden behind Vatican walls is a century-old military force so secretive and loyal, it's stunned world leaders. This isn't fiction, it's history. Today we reveal the Pope's secret army, why it exists, and how it quietly changed the course of nations. In 1506, under the command of Pope Julius II, a group of 150 men marched from Switzerland to Rome. They didn't come for prayer, they came for war. Armed with halberds, armor, and unshakable discipline, they were sworn in as the first members of what would become the Pope's private army, the Pontifical Swiss Guard. That moment, now over 500 years old, marked the beginning of one of the oldest active military units in the world. To understand why this mattered, you have to picture the world in chaos. Europe in the early 1500s was a violent patchwork of kingdoms, empires, and mercenaries for hire. The Catholic Church wasn't just a religious force, it was a political power with land, armies, and enemies. The Pope wasn't merely a spiritual leader, he was a monarch, a landlord, and a kingmaker. And like every ruler of the time, he needed protection. Julius II, also known as the Warrior Pope, wasn't subtle about his priorities. He personally led troops into battle and commissioned the rebuilding of St. Peter's Basilica. He wanted Rome to be both a holy capital and a fortress, but the Papal States were surrounded by powerful families, warring cities, and foreign armies. France to the north, Spain and the Holy Roman Empire from all sides. The Vatican had enemies everywhere and few allies it could fully trust. Switzerland at the time wasn't yet the peaceful, neutral country we know today. It was a region known for its fierce and disciplined mercenaries. Swiss soldiers had built a reputation for being loyal, unshakable under pressure, and terrifying on the battlefield. Julius knew exactly what he was getting, and exactly who he was protecting himself against. So, on January 22, 1506, those first guards entered through the gates of the Vatican and swore allegiance not to a flag, but to a man they believed represented God on earth. Their job wasn't to patrol the streets or win wars, their job was far more focused. Protect the Pope, no matter the cost. Not the church, not the city, the man. Over the centuries, the Swiss Guard evolved with history. They defended the Vatican during the sack of Rome in 1527, where 147 of them died in a single day, holding back the troops of Charles V, while Pope Clement VII escaped to safety. That blood-soaked loyalty didn't just secure the Pope's life, it sealed the Guard's role forever. This wasn't a hired army, this wasn't temporary, this was a brotherhood forged in faith, rooted in sacrifice, and its legacy continues, clad in tradition but sharp as ever. But this was no ordinary security detail. What came next was loyalty beyond imagination. Every year on May 6th, a select group of young Swiss men raise their right hand, 3 fingers extended to represent the Holy Trinity, and swear an oath unlike any other in modern military life. In the solemn courtyard of the Vatican, under the watchful eye of the Pope and centuries of tradition, they vow to lay down their lives, if necessary, for a single man. Not a president, not a general, but the Bishop of Rome. The Swiss Guard's oath isn't just ceremonial, it's binding. It's brutal in its simplicity. The words are spoken with swords drawn and eyes fixed on their commander. They pledge to faithfully, loyally, and honorably serve the Supreme Pontiff, and to sacrifice, if necessary, even my own life. That sentence isn't metaphor, it's a living contract of blood. This unwavering commitment was tested most famously in 1527 during the sack of Rome. The city was overrun by mutinous troops from the Holy Roman Empire, some 20,000 mercenaries, many starving and unpaid, who turned on the capital in a violent rampage. Only 189 Swiss guards stood between them and Pope Clement VII. By the end of the attack, just 42 remained. The other 147 had died defending the Pope as he escaped through a hidden passageway to Castel Sant'Angelo. They didn't die for a cause, they didn't die for land, they died for a man they had sworn to protect. Their blood was spilled on the steps of St. Peter's Basilica. These stones still remember. It's not just a dramatic tale, it's a sacred legacy, one that every modern guard is trained to carry. That kind of service draws a certain kind of recruit. These aren't just Swiss citizens, they're practicing Catholics, trained soldiers and believers in something deeper than a flag. Each one must undergo extensive screening, military training, and theological orientation before ever touching the colorful uniform they're known for. Once inside, they live within Vatican walls. They become part of a world few people ever see, an inner circle built in honor and discretion. This culture of sacrifice is quiet. There are no medals displayed, no war stories broadcast. In a world obsessed with self-promotion, the Swiss Guard stands apart. Their loyalty doesn't scream, it waits. It watches, and it acts only when necessary. There is no illusion of glamour, but behind the pageantry is a life of discipline, silence, and readiness. They carry smartphones, but also swords. They smile for tourists, but stand like statues when needed. The uniform may also echo the past, but the promise they keep is timeless. And even today, that loyalty hasn't faded. It's just become more strategic. Becoming a member of the Pope's Swift Guard is not as simple as putting on the iconic striped uniform and standing still. It's a path lined with precision, loyalty, and rigorous physical and psychological challenges. Behind the colorful display lies one of the most unique and demanding military training programs in the world, a blend of old-world honor and modern warfare readiness. Before a single recruit even sets foot in Vatican City, they must meet strict conditions. He must be a Swiss citizen, unmarried, practicing Roman Catholic, and between the ages of 19 and 30. He must stand at least 5 feet and 8 inches tall and have completed basic training in the Swiss Armed Forces. These requirements aren't for show, they ensure that every man who guards the Pope is already a soldier, disciplined and trained in national service. Once elected, the transformation begins. Training starts in Switzerland, where recruits refine their physical conditioning, undergo firearms practice, and study crisis intervention and security protocols. But once inside the Vatican, everything intensifies. They train in hand-to-hand combat, martial arts, crowd control, and urban defense scenarios. While tourists admire their halberds, the long axes carried as a traditional weapon, inside the guard's private barracks, firearms, semi-automatics, and even advanced surveillance equipment are part of their daily life. They learn to handle Glock pistols, SIG SG-550 rifles, and special security technologies designed for high-level protective detail. Emergency drills simulate assassination attempts, bomb threats, and public riots. Even Pope John Paul II's 1981 shooting is studied in training as a case study in response to time and situational awareness. Every scenario, every possibility is played out until it becomes instinct. But it's not all weapons and reflexes, psychological training is just as important. These men don't just guard a head of state, they guard a religious icon. That means learning when to show strength and when to blend into the background. A Swiss guard must be alert in a crowd of tens of thousands, yet not distract from a holy mass. He must protect, but also respect the space of devotion. Their discipline isn't just physical, it's spiritual. Tradition is baked into their daily lives. Each recruit must study the history of the guard, learn the symbolism behind every medal, and understand the ceremonial structure they represent. They take Latin lessons. They drill with pikes, and during official ceremonies, they move like clockwork. Every pivot, every salute, perfectly timed to centuries of protocol. This duality, old and new, visible and hidden, is what makes their training different. Most elite forces train for war, the Swiss Guard trains to protect peace, while standing inches from the world's most watched religious figure. But who are these men in bright Renaissance uniforms, and why do they still matter? To the casual eye, the Pope's Swiss Guards look like extras from a Shakespeare play. Striped Renaissance uniforms, feathered helmets, standing silently like statues. It's easy to mistake them for tradition wrapped in pageantry, symbols of a religious institution that values ritual over relevance, but that assumption is dangerously wrong. Behind the elaborate fabric lies a network of discipline, intelligence, and firepower built for real-world threats. and the Vatican wouldn't survive a day without it. Their role starts with physical protection, but that's only the surface. The Swiss Guard forms a multi-layered security apparatus that extends far beyond the visible. While some stand in ceremonial posts, others are in plain clothes, armed and constantly scanning. Inside the Vatican's Security Command Center, they monitor CCTV feeds, thermal imaging sensors, and secure radio channels 24/7. They coordinate tightly with the Vatican Gendarmerie, the independent police force responsible for law enforcement inside Vatican City, and maintain direct lines of communication with Interpol and Italy's Carabinieri. When Pope Francis travels, logistics begin months in advance. Routes are scouted with satellite maps, safe zones are arranged, and regional authorities are briefed. If he steps onto St. Peter's Square for a blessing, dozens of agents, some Swiss guards, others Vatican police, blend into the crowd. They know who to watch, when to move, and how to act within a second if anything feels off. Every handshake is calculated. Every balcony appearance is covered from multiple angles. It's not all about physical threats. In recent years, the Vatican has faced digital dangers just like any other global entity. Cybersecurity now plays a critical role. Swiss guards work with IT experts to prevent hacking attempts against internal servers, encrypted communications, and financial databases operated by the Vatican Bank. In 2020, there were confirmed reports of Chinese state-sponsored hackers targeting Vatican email accounts. These breaches weren't just about data, they were about diplomacy and political leverage. The Swiss Guard was part of their security response that quietly blocked further intrusion and tightened internal protocols. While the Pope's face may be the public symbol of peace and unity, the people around him are trained to prepare for the opposite. There are armored vehicles in private garages, there are emergency tunnels under Vatican City, there are rapid evacuation plans for everything from earthquakes to biohazard attacks. The guard's job isn't just to stop chaos, it's to anticipate it. What most people never see is the speed with which the guard can shift from calm tradition to silent efficiency. A ceremonial march one moment can turn into a coordinated lockdown the next. This isn't a museum piece, it's an active defense structure operating under the disguise of custom and faith. Their role is more complex than guarding doors, it reaches into global politics. For decades, the Pope's Swiss Guard operated in the background, calm and composed in their historic uniforms, standing silently as spiritual and political leaders passed through the marble halls of Vatican City. But every so often, something happens, quiet, controlled, barely seen, that makes the world leaders pause and realize this isn't just a ceremonial guard. This is a highly trained, deeply loyal military force with eyes everywhere. In 1981, when Pope John Paul II was shot in St. Peter's Square, the world saw chaos. What it didn't see was how quickly the Swiss Guard neutralized the space, closed off exits, and quietly secured the scene. They weren't front and center, shouting or tackling the attacker. That was left to local police. But the guard's response behind the scenes was instant. The injured Pope was rushed away, a backup route already prepared by Vatican security. Intelligence officers from the guard quickly swept the area for other potential threats. Several heads of state later commented privately on how quickly order returned to a place that had just hosted an attempted assassination. Years later, during Pope Benedict XVI's visit to the United States in 2008, a diplomat close to the planning described how impressed the US Secret Service was with the Guard's professionalism and discretion. The Swiss Guard didn't just protect, they predicted. They coordinated seamlessly with American agents and made clear that they had already mapped out multiple exit strategies. Crowd control zones and emergency staging areas, including ones the host country hadn't considered. Under Pope Francis, the Swiss Guard's role has quietly expanded. The world sees a humble pope who travels in a modest Fiat and prefers simplicity, but he's also deeply briefed. Vatican insiders say he receives daily security updates, not just from Italian authorities, but from the Guard's internal network, which quietly shares information with global intelligence partners. While his public image is calm and approachable, the perimeter around him is anything but. What really makes leaders notice, though, is what never happens. In a world where churches have been bombed, faith leaders have been attacked and crowds carry unpredictable risks, the Pope has walked freely among thousands, sometimes tens of thousands without incident. That doesn't happen by chance, it happens because his guard makes sure of it. And what's even more shocking is what the public doesn't get to see. Behind the towering beauty of St. Peter's Basilica and the serenity of Vatican courtyards lies a digital infrastructure most visitors never think about. The Vatican may be the smallest country in the world, but its security systems runs with the sophistication of a global superpower. While the Swiss Guard stands as the face of protection, the real muscle, silent, technical, and deeply wired, lives in servers, screens, and sensors buried beneath ancient stone. Cameras line the Vatican borders, not just for show, but powered by real-time facial recognition software capable of identifying threats before they get close. These aren't off-the-shelf surveillance tools, many are custom-designed, integrated with intelligence databases across Europe. Visitors walking into Vatican museums or crowding the square don't realize they've already been scanned and sorted. Harmless tourists from potential risks, a single irregular movement in a crowd, a face flagged from a watch list, and internal alerts ripple through security channels in seconds. The cyber defense is just as active. In 2020, the Vatican confirmed attempts by Chinese hackers to infiltrate its systems ahead of delicate negotiations over bishop appointments. Cyber experts later traced the breach attempt to a group known for state-backed surveillance. Vatican IT teams working with Swiss Guard intelligence officers sealed off the threat quickly. No public panic, no diplomatic breakdown, just quiet resilience in the face of geopolitical pressure. Beneath the Apostolic Palace, there's a security nerve center filled with monitors, encrypted lines, and maps tracking not just Vatican territory, but threats to Catholic institutions worldwide. This is where global religious tensions are watched in real time, from attacks on churches in Nigeria to anti-Christian protests in South Asia. The Vatican's digital footprint isn't passive, it's proactive. Analysts follow trends, intercept chatter, and quietly tip off allies if threats rise against Christian populations. Information flows in from Interpol, the European Union's intelligence sharing network, and private Catholic organizations around the globe. The Guard and Gendarmerie filter varially and flag anything that might matter to the Pope's safety or the Church's stability. For a place so rooted in ritual, Vatican security runs like a machine built for the 21st century. But no matter how advanced the tools, it all serves one purpose: protect the head of the Church. Still, for all their power and precision, this army stays loyal to one man. Do you think the Pope's secret army holds more power than the world realizes? Leave your thoughts in the comments.